Story number 1. Shadows on Highway 44, Canada. 1987. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that relentless December storm in 1987 haunting me like the persistent winds that once howled down Highway 44 in the remote stretches of Canada. My name is David Thompson, and the tragic events that unfolded during that fateful drive remain etched in my soul. A constant reminder of the thin line between safety and the unknown. It was late November, the air crisp with the onset of winter, when Emma and I decided to take a road trip from Toronto to Montreal. We were celebrating our first anniversary, eager to escape the hustle of city life and embrace the serene beauty of the Canadian countryside. The weather had been unpredictable, with sudden snowstorms that could turn a clear day into a whiteout within hours. But we were prepared, or so we thought. By the time we reached Highway 44, the sky had darkened ominously. Heavy snowflakes began to fall, quickly accumulating into thick drifts that obscured our vision. The road ahead was barely visible, the markings on the pavement fading under the relentless assault of the storm. Emma, ever the cautious one, suggested we pull over and wait out the worst of the weather. Reluctantly, I agreed, parking our old Subaru at the side of the road. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up, their rapid motions barely cutting through the blinding whiteout. We wrapped ourselves in blankets, sipping hot coffee to stave off the chill. The cabin of the car felt suffocating, the cold seeping in through every crack and crevice. Hours passed in tense silence, the storm showing no signs of abating. As night deepened, a sense of unease settled over us. Emma mentioned seeing shadows moving outside the car, figures that seemed to dance just beyond the reach of our headlights. I tried to dismiss her fears as a product of the storm-induced anxiety, but the flickering lights and eerie stillness made it hard to ignore. The howling wind carried whispers that seemed to brush against our ears, voices that spoke in hushed tones of things best left unseen. Suddenly, a loud thud jolted us from our uneasy reverie. My heart pounded as I reached for the steering wheel, trying to peer through the thick snowfall. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, a figure emerged from the blinding white, moving with an unnatural grace towards our car. My blood ran cold as the figure drew closer, its features indistinct in the swirling snow. Emma grabbed my arm, pulling me back as the figure stopped. Standing at the edge of our vehicle, there was an air of desperation in its stance, a silent plea that sent shivers down my spine. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the storm's fury. The figure remained silent, its presence both haunting and sorrowful. I reached for the door handle, my fingers numb from the cold, and slowly cracked the window open. The biting wind whipped through the small gap, freezing the back of my hand as I peered outside. There was no one there, only the endless expanse of white, swallowing any trace of humanity. "Please, help me," the figure seemed to say without words, its eyes meeting mine with a depth of sorrow that pierced through the storm. "Don't leave me here." Panic surged through me as I struggled to comprehend the apparition. Before I could react, the door suddenly swung open, the force sending me stumbling back into the car. Emma screamed, pulling me back inside as the figure vanished into the storm, leaving behind an oppressive silence that felt almost tangible. We tried to call for help, dialing 911 repeatedly, but the storm had severed all communication lines. Desperation clawed at us as we realized we were truly isolated, trapped in the heart of the storm with no hope of rescue. The temperature continued to plummet, our breath forming icy clouds in the frigid air as exhaustion set in. As the hours dragged on, the storm showed no mercy. Emma and I huddled together, our bodies numb from the cold, struggling to stay awake. Then, in the final moments before darkness claimed us, a sudden crash echoed through the night. My heart raced as I reached for the door, the adrenaline pushing me to take one last desperate step outside. The snow was even thicker now, the world around us a swirling vortex of white and gray. I looked around frantically, searching for any sign of movement, but the snow had swallowed everything. Just as I was about to turn back, my eyes caught sight of something, a line of strange, jagged footprints leading away from our car and disappearing into a nearby grove of trees. "Emma, look," I cried, pointing towards the footprints. "We need to follow them." She nodded weakly, and together, we stepped out into the storm, our feet crunching against the deep snow. The footprints were unlike anything we'd seen before. Twisted, erratic, as if made by something in a state of panic. The closer we followed them, the more the air seemed to thicken with an unseen presence, the whispers of the past intertwining with the howling wind. We reached the end of the trail at the entrance of an old, abandoned cabin, its wooden structure barely holding up against the elements. The door hung ajar, creaking ominously as the wind pushed it open further. A sense of dread settled over us as we approached, the darkness inside the cabin swallowing our light. "Stay close," I whispered, grabbing Emma's hand as we stepped inside. The cabin was cold, the air thick with the scent of decay and something else, something ancient and malevolent. The remnants of a once cozy interior lay in disarray, broken furniture scattered across the floor, and walls adorned with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. As we ventured deeper, the temperature dropped even further, our breaths visible in the icy air. The whispers grew louder, voices intertwined with our own fears, guiding us towards the heart of the cabin. In the center of the room stood an old wooden altar, its surface covered in frost and etched with symbols that mirrored those on the walls. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Our bodies numb from the extreme cold, the whispers turned into anguished cries, the voices of those who had been lost to the storm, their spirits trapped in this frozen limbo. Shadows danced around us, forming indistinct figures that reached out with spectral hands, their eyes hollow and desperate. "Help us!" The voices echoed, a chorus of sorrow and despair. "Set us free," realizing that we were not just fighting against the storm, but against the lingering spirits of those who had perished before us. I knew we had to perform a ritual of acknowledgement and release. Together, Emma and I began to recite prayers and chants, honoring the memories of those lost to the storm and the cabin's dark history. As we spoke, the symbols on the altar began to glow with an otherworldly light, the oppressive energy lifting as the spirits found solace in our acknowledgement. The shadows receded, replaced by a serene stillness that enveloped the cabin. The storm outside began to wane, the winds calming as the first light of dawn pierced through the windows, illuminating the snow-covered landscape. Exhausted but relieved, we made our way back to our car, the weight of the night's horrors still heavy on our hearts. The storm had finally subsided, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure that we had never thought possible. As we drove away, the sun rising over the horizon casting a warm glow on the pristine snow, I knew that we had survived not just a natural disaster, but a supernatural ordeal that tested the very limits of our humanity. In the days that followed, our story became a local legend, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lie beyond the reach of civilization and the unseen forces that linger in the heart of the storm. Emma and I returned to our lives, forever changed by the experience, our bond strengthened by the shared trauma and the knowledge that we had faced the darkness together and emerged on the other side. Years have passed since that December storm, but the memory of Highway 44 and the haunted cabin remain vivid in my mind. I often find myself driving those remote stretches of road, the snow-covered landscape a stark reminder of the horrors that can unfold in the dead of winter. The legacy of that night serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope in the face of overwhelming fear. And so, I warn others, respect the forces of nature, honor the memories of those who have lost their way, and understand that some storms bring more than just snow and ice. For in the heart of Minnesota, amidst the silent blizzard and lingering shadows, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of spirits, but also a light that can guide us towards redemption and peace. Story number 2. Echoes in the Blizzard, USA. 2013. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that relentless winter storm in 2013 clawing at my consciousness like the icy winds that once howled around me on that desolate stretch of Minnesota highway. My name is Michael Reynolds, and the events that unfolded during those harrowing days remain etched in my soul. A constant reminder of the thin line between survival and succumbing to the darkness that lurks in the coldest of places. It was late December, a time when the nights stretched endlessly, and the snow blanketed the landscape in a suffocating silence. I was driving home from a late shift at the factory, my thoughts consumed by the mundane worries of everyday life. The highway stretched before me, a lonely ribbon of asphalt winding through the heart of Minnesota's frozen wilderness. The weather had been harsh that season, but nothing compared to what was about to descend upon me. Around midnight, as I navigated the familiar route, the sky darkened ominously, the temperature plummeted, and the first flakes of snow began to fall, light at first, then rapidly thickening into a blinding blizzard. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. The world outside my windshield reduced to a swirling maelstrom of white. I turned on my headlights, but even their beams struggled against the onslaught of snow and wind. I pulled over to the side of the highway, my heart pounding as the storm intensified. The wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, rattling my car's windows and sending chills down my spine. I tried to calm myself, remembering the survival tips I'd read about in case of such emergencies. Stay in the car, conserve heat, and wait out the storm. But as the hours dragged on, the cold seeped into my bones, each breath a visible reminder of my fragile mortality. With the car's heater running on low, I huddled under a blanket, trying to stay warm. The storm raged outside, a merciless force that seemed determined to claim me. My phone had no signal, and the weight of isolation pressed heavily upon me. I began to lose track of time, the minutes blending into hours as the blizzard showed no signs of relenting. It was during one of the coldest nights, when the snow was piled high around my vehicle, that I first heard it, a faint knocking sound against the side of the car. First, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my mind, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate, as if someone or something was trying to get my attention. My heart raced, a mix of fear and desperation urging me to investigate. I reached for the door handle, my fingers numb from the cold, and slowly cracked the window open. The biting wind whipped through the small gap, freezing the back of my hand. I peered out into the impenetrable white, but saw nothing. The snow had transformed the world into an endless expanse of white, swallowing any sign of life. I tried to reassure myself, telling myself it was just the storm, but the knocking persisted, growing more insistent with each passing minute. Summoning every ounce of courage, I opened the door fully, the frigid air enveloping me in its icy embrace. To my horror, there was no one there, only the swirling snow and the howling wind. I stepped outside, the snow crunching beneath my boots, and looked around desperately for any sign of movement. The silence was deafening, broken only by the storm's relentless fury. Just as I was about to retreat back into the warmth of my car, a shadowy figure materialized at the edge of my vision. It moved with an unnatural grace, its form barely discernible against the blinding white. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for my phone, hoping to call for help, but it remained unresponsive. The figure approached, its presence both haunting and inexplicably sorrowful. "Please, help me," a voice whispered, carried on the howling wind. It was a woman's voice, filled with despair and longing. I strained to hear her words, but the storm drowned out most of the sound, leaving only a faint echo in my ears. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking with fear and cold. The figure paused, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of her face, haunted eyes, lips quivering in silent plea. Then, as quickly as she had appeared, she vanished into the storm, leaving me alone with the oppressive silence once more. I rushed back to my car, the memory of her sorrowful gaze burning into my mind. Desperation clawed at me as I realized I was truly alone, trapped in the merciless grip of the blizzard with no hope of rescue. The car's heater had long since given out, and my body was succumbing to the unforgiving cold. Each breath was a struggle, every movement a reminder of my impending doom. In those final hours, the storm seemed to grow more malevolent, the howling winds now resembling anguished cries that echoed through the desolate landscape. I heard the faint sound of footsteps crunching in the snow outside, followed by the same sorrowful whispers that had reached me earlier. Panic surged through me as I felt an invisible presence surrounding me, pressing down with a weight that threatened to crush my spirit. "Don't leave me," the voice echoed, now clearer and more urgent. "Stay with me." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of fear and empathy overwhelming me. "I can't. I have to survive," I whispered back, my voice barely audible over the storm. The presence seemed to respond, the air growing colder as if her sorrow was enveloping me. I felt a connection, a shared sense of despair that transcended the boundaries of life and death. In that moment, I understood that she was lost, a soul trapped by the storm's fury, unable to find peace amidst the chaos. As my strength waned, I felt her presence beside me, a comforting yet eerie companionship in the face of utter isolation. The storm outside began to subside, the winds calming to a gentle whisper as the first light of dawn broke through the lingering clouds. The snow had finally stopped falling, leaving behind a world transformed by its fury. Exhausted and on the brink of collapse, I attempted to start the car one last time. Miraculously, the engine roared to life, the warmth returning as I crawled into the driver's seat. I looked back one final time, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but she was gone, leaving only the silent, snow-covered landscape in her wake. I drove for hours, the roads now clear and the storm's aftermath revealing the extent of its devastation. Rescue teams eventually found me, exhausted and frostbitten, but alive. The authorities were baffled by my story, dismissing it as the hallucinations induced by extreme cold and isolation. But I knew the truth. She had been there, a lost soul seeking connection amidst the storm's wrath. The memory of that night remains vivid, a haunting reminder of the thin line between life and death, and the unseen forces that linger in the coldest of places. The loss of my comrades in the storm was a tragedy that still weighs heavily on me. But the presence I felt that night is a reminder that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest moments. Years have passed since that winter storm, but the echoes of that night still resonate within me. I often find myself gazing out at the snowy landscapes of Minnesota, the silent beauty a stark contrast to the horrors I endured. The legacy of that night serves as a cautionary tale, a testament to the enduring power of nature's fury and the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. And so, I warn others, respect the forces of nature, honor the memories of those who have lost their way, and understand that some storms bring more than just snow and ice. For in the heart of winter, amidst the silent blizzard and lingering shadows, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of spirits, leaving behind only echoes of fear and the eternal struggle for peace. Story number 3. Echoes of the Frozen Summit, USA. 1996. I still wake up in the dead of night, the memory of that harrowing May evening in 1996 clawing at my consciousness like the relentless winds that once swept across Everest's unforgiving slopes. My name is Thomas Bennett, and the tragic events that unfolded during our expedition remain etched in my soul, a constant reminder of the thin line between ambition and oblivion. It was the peak of spring, a time when the snow begins to soften under the sun's warm embrace, and the air is filled with the promise of new beginnings. Our team, a group of 5 seasoned climbers, had gathered with one purpose: to conquer Everest, the world's tallest and most treacherous mountain. The allure of standing atop the world, witnessing the sunrise from such heights, was a dream we all shared. By early May, we had established our base camp near the summit, a temporary refuge amidst the towering icebergs and endless snowdrifts. The days were spent acclimatizing, pushing our limits, and preparing for the final ascent. Spirits were high, camaraderie unbreakable, until the storm began to brew, a subtle shift that none of us could have predicted. It started with ominous clouds gathering on the horizon, the wind picking up with an unnerving ferocity. Meteorological reports warned of an impending blizzard, one that could engulf us before we even reached the peak. We tried to stay optimistic, believing our experience and preparation would see us through. But as the days progressed, the signs of the approaching storm became undeniable. On the 9th day, as we made our final push towards the summit, the weather took a drastic turn. The sky darkened, and snow began to fall in thick, blinding sheets. Visibility dropped to near zero, and the temperature plummeted, the cold seeping into our bones. Panic set in as we realized the severity of the situation. We were caught in the heart of a vicious blizzard with no way to retreat. We set up a makeshift shelter, huddling together for warmth as the storm raged outside. The howling winds seemed to carry voices, whispers that danced on the edge of perception. Shadows twisted and contorted in the flickering light of our headlamps, playing tricks on our exhausted minds. As the hours dragged on, the oppressive silence was broken only by the relentless pounding of the storm. One night, as the storm reached its peak, I was jolted awake by a bone-chilling scream. My heart raced as I scrambled out of my sleeping bag, the cold air burning my lungs. I peeked outside the shelter, only to see nothing but a sea of white. The world transformed into an endless expanse of snow and ice. The scream had vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me with a lingering sense of dread. The following morning, the storm had subsided, but the aftermath was nothing short of nightmarish. As we ventured outside to assess the damage, we discovered the frozen bodies of our fallen comrades, their poses twisted in eternal agony. It was as if they had been abruptly halted mid-struggle, their souls trapped in a state of perpetual torment. The sight was horrifying, a stark reminder of the mountain's merciless nature. But the true horror was yet to come. As the days passed and we struggled to survive amidst dwindling supplies, strange phenomena began to unfold. We heard faint whispers in the howling wind, voices that seemed to call our names from the frozen abyss. Ghostly apparitions appeared in the distance, their forms barely discernible through the swirling snow. They watched us with hollow eyes, their presence both haunting and sorrowful. One evening, as we huddled together in our shelter, Elena, our meteorologist, spoke up. "I've been experiencing nightmares, visions of our lost friends, trapped and crying out for help." Her voice trembled with fear, mirroring the unease that had settled over our team. Sergey, our lead climber, tried to rationalize the phenomena. "It's just the stress of the storm and the isolation. Our minds are playing tricks on us." But his words did little to quell the growing fear that gnawed at our sanity. As we pressed on, the apparitions became more frequent and more vivid. One night, Ivan, the mountaineer, vanished without a trace, leaving only a frozen shadow in his place. Desperation and fear took hold as we realized we were not just battling the elements, but something far more sinister. The mountain seemed alive, feeding on our fear and despair, trapping us in its icy grip. Determined to survive and uncover the truth behind the haunting, I led a small group to explore deeper into the mountain's heart. Armed with limited supplies and a flickering hope, we ventured into a hidden crevasse, the entrance obscured by a curtain of ice. Inside, the air was thick with an otherworldly presence, the walls adorned with ancient symbols that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. In the center of the crevasse stood a stone altar, its surface covered in frost and etched with cryptic runes. The whispers grew louder, the voices now forming a coherent plea. "Release us," they echoed, their sorrow palpable. It was then that we understood. The spirits of those who had perished on Everest were trapped here, their souls bound by the mountain's dark magic. Sergei stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped us all. "We're here to help you find peace. Tell us what we need to do." The air shimmered, and the apparitions materialized around us, their ethereal forms flickering like candle flames. The leader among them, a figure with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression, spoke in a voice that resonated deep within my being. "You must honor our memories, remember our lives, and acknowledge the mountain's wrath. Only then can we be free." Understanding the gravity of our situation, we began to perform a ritual of remembrance, honoring the lives of our lost friends and the spirits trapped within the mountain. As we recited our prayers, the symbols on the altar glowed brighter, the oppressive energy lifting as the spirits found the closure they so desperately sought. A brilliant light enveloped us, and the apparitions began to fade, their presence replaced by a profound sense of peace. The mountain seemed to sigh, the storm clouds parting to reveal a clear sky. We knew then that our journey was not just a test of survival, but a quest for redemption and healing. As dawn broke over Everest, we made our final ascent to the summit, the mountain now serene and majestic in the early morning light. The horrors we had endured remained a haunting memory, a testament to the mountain's unforgiving nature and the enduring power of the human spirit. Years have passed since that fateful expedition, but the memory of Everest's frozen embrace remains vivid in my mind. I often find myself gazing up at its towering peaks, the snow glistening in the sunlight like the remnants of a long-forgotten nightmare. The legacy of our ordeal serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that some mountains hold secrets too profound to uncover without facing the darkness within ourselves. And so, I warn others, respect the forces of nature, honor the memories of those who have lost their way, and understand that some ambitions come at a price too high to bear. For in the heart of Everest, amidst the silent snow and lingering shadows, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of spirits, but also a light that can guide us towards redemption and peace.